to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Commissioner Clarkson?
Present.
Newman? Present. Commissioner Wetland?
Here.
Zuccolillo?
Here.
Chair Jones?
Here. The first item of business is approval of the minutes of the last meeting, February 19th.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Zuccolillo, seconded by Wetland. Commissioner Clarkson?
Yes.
Newman?
Yes.
Wetland?
Aye.
Zuccolillo?
Yes.
Chair Jones?
Yes. Item 6B, discuss the current provisions of the Town of Paradise Tree Preservation Ordinance and consider communicating any recommended changes to the Town Council.
I believe it was last month that I provided a copy of the ordinance to planning commissioners, and hopefully you've had a chance to go through it. The town has a long history of tree ordinance. In fact, the first one was adopted as ordinance number 21, which is 5 months after the town incorporated back in town incorporated in 1979, May of 1980. The first ordinance was adopted. There have been a lot of changes along the way. Currently, there is a role for the planning commissioner from time to time for larger projects. For the most part, probably 99% of the individual permits issued are issued over the counter by counter staff. I don't know what kind of questions you're going to have for me or suggestions, but my pen is ready and I'd be happy to answer questions regarding ordinance history, purposes of various provisions in the ordinance, function of the ordinance. Anywhere you'd like to go.
I have a question. I noticed at one time the ordinance was suspended. Do you know kind of what happened with that, or what the thought was at the time?
The thought was that it was going to be, the ordinance was different back then in the sense that we had to do a lot more field inspections and there were a lot more public hearings. And so it was more of a drain on staff than it is now. The idea was to save money. That's what was one of the findings. It was suspended for, I don't know, a year and a half, something like that. It was reinstated shortly thereafter.
What year was that approximately?
I think 1997, something like that. Looks like it was suspended in May of 1996, which was probably an urgency ordinance that had to be renewed the urgency ordinance had to be renewed in 1997, May 1997.
You remember what?
I don't remember why. I was there, but I don't remember why.
There was, and then in the next year, 1998, February 1998, it was reestablished.
And was it reestablished from was it the old ordinance just put back in, or did it change from the other back in?
The way I recall, there were some changes. There was a period in the 90s when timber was valuable, relatively so, and that's when some of the teeth were put into the ordinance, because there was a sense of alarm in the community about individuals who were purchasing residential properties relatively inexpensively, logging them, and then selling them. And there was even an instance where an individual, and there's even a passage in the ordinance that's reflective of this, where an individual who wished to log his property, I think got a stop work notice or something because the permit wasn't issued, and put initial face cuts, first and second cuts into all the trees, so they, had to remove it. So that, that just made, everything a little bit worse in terms of urgency and so on and so forth. But the ordinance was reestablished after that, on February 1998, and has been in place ever since. Without real drastic changes, One of the more significant changes, the last go-round, which was in 2008, was that the tree committee, which was actually a hearing body, was changed into a body that isn't a hearing body. They're only an advisory body now, and they're used as needed. And frankly, since 2008, they've been used by staff for various smallish things, sometimes a capital improvements project where we're kind of on the fence about whether we should keep a tree or not. We call one of these tree experts, or all three of them for that matter, and have them analyze the tree, see if it should be retained, if it's a candidate for retention. But they've not met since 2008 in project review.
So Craig, so to make sure I understand this, the tree in lieu fee, the mitigation fee, they're not able to plant a tree on their property, that's a $177 fee. But on B of 81240, it says a permit fee for the felling of any qualifying tree shall be established by the town council.
Yes.
I haven't found, so I'm assuming the tree in lieu fee is separate than the permit fee. What is the permit
Yes.
fee for under 4 and then for over 5? Since this is
For
how this is written?
the permit fee is established in the fee schedule by resolution, by council resolution, and the in lieu fee was adopted by a separate resolution. I think I have some of those fees you're looking for. In our adopted fee schedule, you asked for, how many, with the fee for 4 trees?
Well, it references as 2 different ways for the permit, 4 and under, and then 5
Right.
and more, and then
Right.
depending on which you
So-
go with.
So for 1 tree, it's $48.68. For up to 4 trees, it's $109.16. If you have to go to a hearing, either the planning director or planning commission level, for 5 or more trees, and not all permits for 5 or more trees go to a hearing, and I'll explain that in a second. But for a minor hearing in front of the planning commission and planning director, the hearing fee is $173.60. For a major, which is 30 trees or more, it's $173 plus $2 a tree. So it starts out at $243.04, goes up from there. Most permit applications that we get for 5 or more trees are for single-family residential development, which are largely insulated from the requirements of any hearing at all. And council wanted it that way so that you could build a house, take out 8 trees, not have a public hearing. You don't have to have a public hearing for 5 trees for a driveway, even 5 trees for a garden, 4 or 5 trees for a fence. Anything that's single-family residential related, either the dwelling itself or an accessory use. Maybe it's a new leach field, maybe it's a swimming pool. None of those things are subject to any hearings. They're all over the counter.
The other question I have, it talks about, in the same item, 81240, it talks about a qualifying tree, 31 inches or greater in circumference or 10 inches or greater in diameter.
Right.
It doesn't give me a definition other than size of what a qualifying tree is. So is it just the size of the tree? It gives me suggestions on what I could plant, the suggestions to plant, but not, I mean, if it's a tree of heaven.
Qualifying tree is in the definitions in the back.
Yeah, it
Is it? Did I miss that?
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize.
That's what I recall.
Qualifying tree. Yeah, it doesn't give me the species. It's just
Oh,
giving me size.
fruit and nut trees are exempt, and that's in there, that's in the ordinance. And by fruit and nut trees, I mean trees that are typically grown as orchard trees, or can be, or were grown as orchard trees. And that was kind of a recognition of the apple orchard heritage here. So walnut trees are not subject to permits, dead trees are not subject to permits, regardless of their size. And nothing under 10 inches is subject to permits.
I guess I'm looking at this from the viewpoint of, it can be intimidating, the way this is written. There's a lot of, I guess maybe I would like us to think about rewriting it.
Well, we don't require people to understand this so much as we just explain it at the counter. It's all, to have us explain it is so much easier. So what are you taking it out for? Just crack it outside. If you just give me a picture, email me a picture. We'll issue those. And like I said, 99% are over the counter.
Can I ask?
And the other thing is that a lot of tree work is done by professionals, and they know their way around this, like they know the way around.
So you've got to hire somebody.
Zuccolillo, Commissioner Zuccolillo, what was your thought when you asked us to review the ordinance and with economic growth? Did you have an instance where you were privy that it prevented economic growth?
Just from talking to people, that have looking at projects or whatnot, and when they're trying to calculate the cost of the tree removal, or, if it's just a homeowner who wants to, cut down a tree, instead of just, hiring a company to come do it, they gotta come down to town, you gotta get a permit, you gotta take a picture, or whatever it may be, so, I want to, visit the ordinance to find out if it's something we want to look at changing, or suspending, or whatever it may be. But just people I've talked to, anytime they're doing a project, whether it's, building a house or whatnot, there always seems to be all these, it may not necessarily just be the cost of the permit, but the time to go down there. Because if you're not gonna do it yourself, and you hire, a tree company or an arborist, well, you're paying for their time. So that was my intention bringing it up.
Craig, I got a quick question. In the spirit of exploring our roles as public servants, has the tree ordinance provoked a more positive or negative response from the community as a whole?
I would have to say positive. I think the rank and file citizen is probably, I don't know, I can't speak for the development community, but when we've had these hearings, they've been very emotional. Very emotional. That's the experience I can speak from, is they've been very, very emotional.
I think
Public Resource Code 4291 is the wildland urban interface requirements for forestry and urban areas separation. We should mimic that. The state gives permits depending on for nothing, depending on the percentage of the canopy that you're affecting. Why should the town charge $200, $300, $500, and make you spend another $500 to do what Department of Forestry, the professionals, are you should do for a healthy forest? It's just more burden, and we need to streamline it. What we're doing now doesn't work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dan, you said you had comments.
And,
Yes.
okay,
Go right ahead.
some of it's already been stated, but the reason for the tree ordinance, as Craig mentioned, was because of what has also been mentioned in regards to the trees. It was a very high dollar-making product at one time, and so there was a period when there were a lot of trees cut down for that. And I can remember the grief and hassle. There was one person in particular that wanted to do a bunch of clear cutting, and that's what just really tipped it off. Yes, and then Kmart, when Kmart was
Perhaps what started the tree ordinance to begin
I
with.
think so, Kmart, when they were taking,
Also may have had a hand in pushing the town over the top toward incorporation.
I think so, yes. Yeah, and I remember that Kmart, my wife and I were talking about it, she said, Kmart, wasn't that also? And I'm absolutely correct. But like was mentioned, a lot of that is past, it doesn't really apply anymore. And I don't know how many of you, I've only lived here 40 years, I don't know who's lived here longer, but anyway, when we first moved to Paradise, you all have been up to the top of Sawmill Peak, Fire Lookout, look down towards the town. When I first moved here, you could look down towards the town, you could see a fair number of homes. And you could, of course, see all the churches and the major buildings, several I had built and so on. You could see them. You go up there now, you can't see a thing. The canopy is so solid. You can maybe see kind of a divot where Kmart Shopping Center is, or a little divot where the CMA parking lot is, or something like that. But the whole town is just totally covered. And so my personal opinion is the whole tree ordinance is not needed because it's just not a problem. And after '08, I did a lot of talking with a lot of people and didn't get anywhere because I couldn't get enough people on fire to make a potential change. I was part of a thing called VADS, Volunteers Advancing Defensible Space, and after the '08 fires, the fire department had grants to clear for fire safety for defensible space. They had grants to go out and look at lots and recommend to people that they take a fair number of their trees and clear around their houses and so on and so on. And I got involved because when the town was giving these notices to people, and the elderly people couldn't afford it, there was a whole group of us citizens for 2.5 years that My wife loved it. She never saw me on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon for a long time, because that's all we did, is we went to elderly people's lots and cleared it for them, dropping trees, cutting brush, trimming, clearing, et cetera, et cetera. But then that came to a halt because they ran out of grant monies, and so that's not being done anymore. But when you drive around town, and I have taken over the years, a number of people around town just said, come and look, sit down with me, and let's start driving this town. There are so many lots in this town that are completely undefensible. It is absolutely a travesty. Like many people have said, it's not when the town burns down, if, it's when. When there's a big fire like '08, and God's blessing isn't on us, and it happens to stop at the lower end of town, one of these days it's going to come roaring through town. And there are so many more trees that need to come down. Now, in the middle of town, most people are fairly defensible, but there still are these parcels, and I can just drive around and just point you to them, where tons of trees need to come out, because it's just terrible. If a fire happened to get to some of these locations, it was feed it, and it would take off like a roaring train again.
I'm saying for the I mean, there's lots of little small remaining lots all around, but there's not like, you know, besides PCV, I can't think of like a 20-acre parcel where a developer would come in, and there's what, Blue Oak or whatever that one is down, but there's not any trees on it.
That's pretty
There's-
bare.
But
There's
beyond-
single lots.
That's what I'm saying, there's not like a 20-acre parcel anywhere in town, even a 10-acre, where a developer wants to come in, split the thing.
Right.
Keep in mind, a lawyer once told me that the most difficult contract to go up against is the shortest, clearest cut contract, because there's not a lot of opportunities for you to find fault within that. Keep that in mind. I'm recommending that we go with just the one excuse of creating defensible space against wildland fires. I'm thinking about making a motion along the lines of something as simple as a motion to request the town council suspend the tree ordinance for all residential lots for the purpose of increasing defensible space against wildland fires.
Wow, that's good.
I'll second. I'll
I'll
second
let
that.
you say.
Okay, so to make it official, I'd like to make a motion.
Do you want to give them the option to modify or suspend, or just suspend?
Anybody
Suspend.
like? Anything? Okay. What about for a period of time? A period of 3 years or 5 years or?
How about just
What
leave
about
it
ag?
open?
and then somebody can talk to them and say, we talked about years, but we'll leave that up to you.
They could always bring it back
They can
down
always
to
take
us,
it back.
right?
By attaching the suspension to it, it makes me feel like you're not sure. You know, oh, we might be wrong, so we're gonna leave it open for somebody to come back. And I think if we are wrong, and somebody comes back in the future and something does happen of a clear-cut nature, it's going to be brought back up.
Mhm.
Why did we suspend it? Let's look at revisiting this and reenacting it.
So you're choosing a different word other than
I'm-
suspend.
No, suspend's fine, but I don't want
Or
to.
You don't want a
No revisit period.
I don't want a time frame.
Got
Leave it open. That leaves it open in the event of.
I'll
I
make
like
it.
that.
That's good.
Okay, so, are we all in agreement?
Yeah, and it's already been seconded.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to request that the town council suspend the tree ordinance for all residential lots for the purpose of increasing defensible fire space against wildland fires.
And you're defining residential the way Craig did.
ARRTR.
Residential lots. Okay.
Residentially zoned.
Zone lots.
What about ag? You've got some ag 2, ag 5.
AR is agricultural residential, we've always included that. in
Okay,
residential.
so okay.
So if you have that written down, so I can just take your business.
I shall do that.
That's recorded.
So include
It should
residential
be
zones.
recorded.
Residential zone lots.
Plus, he's got us on tape, so
And did we have a second to that motion?
I'll make the official second.
Okay, so the motion is by Clarkson, seconded by Zurfluh to approve Commissioner Clarkson's wording. All in favor, Commissioner Clarkson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Rutland,
Aye.
Zurfluh,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Just a reminder, council's not obligated to bring it back to you as a body, they never have. They might, but they never have.
They're much smarter than we are.
Well, it's just, no,
They think
it's
so.
just, it's just not something that you're required to read.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our next item is continued discussion regarding the possibility of establishing local control of mobile home parks, which are now administered by the state of California within the jurisdiction of the town of Paradise. And I think where we left this last time, Michael, you were gonna do some.
Yeah, I've been in contact with HCD. They're short-staffed and haven't gotten all the information to me, so with the committee's permission, I'd like to table it till the next meeting.
Table it or schedule it for the next meeting. If you want it on the agenda.
Yes.
You wanna carry it over?
Carry it over.
Okay. Committee activities, I don't believe we had any. And our last agenda item is identification of future agenda items.
I wish I had a big fat development project.
What's becoming of the building that's directly across from the recreational hall on Skyway?
I was out there today, as a matter of fact, and that's the future site or proposed site for a 9,000 square foot Dollar General store, which they'll be very quick to tell you is not a dollar store. It's like a smallish Walmart. But it was, I pointed out that it's their fault for calling it Dollar General. So they're trying to do what people are calling value engineering now, because their bids came in too high. So we're in a little bit of a back and forth right now, but they're still on board with both feet so far as I can tell.
This is the site that PG&E is,
Yes, they're tearing up the front of it, right?
what are they trying to do? Are they trying to feed into?
They're
an
putting in a
existing line?
new, no, I'm not think of the word. Yes, there you go. Bigger. And for those of you who haven't been on that property, it's a real slum. It's gonna be so great to have a brand new building there. It is just awful. So,
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
I just can't, I mean, I think everybody can say, you can't, it's not subjective.
Anything's an improvement. By the way, one of the pieces of property changes that might be affected in the future is Noble's Orchard, when that develops. However, no trees on that except fruit trees.
Right, so you don't need a
They'll
permit.
only improve.
So, no one has any suggestions for future items? Okay. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.